Hey, this is the last one in the summer series. I changed the sign last night so I don't have to put it back up. Summer in the Psalms, the Rhythms of Life. And this is it. This is my last one for the summer. You don't have to listen to me preach Psalms for a little while. And I've been excited about getting to this one. This is a good one today because it's the last one. Next week is Youth Sunday, and then we launch into September. Still in the season of Pentecost. Are y'all getting the idea? Pentecost is also known as ordinary time. And we've been in Pentecost for over 10 weeks. I don't know how many weeks now. And it's already longer than any other season. So you ought to be getting the feeling about this right now. And we've got a ways to go. We're not through with Pentecost until late in November. So hang in there. Today I want to preach from Psalm 77. But I want to start by telling you this really cool story from the Old Testament. You may already know it, but I'm going to tell it to you in a way I've heard it told. Jacob, who was the grandson of Abraham. Everybody knows Father Abraham, right? Father Abraham with many. Okay. Jacob was the grandson of Abraham. He was one of two sons of Isaac, Jacob and Esau, the twin brothers who fought. Jacob was the swindler, if you remember from the Old Testament, who stole the birthright from Esau, who was actually the firstborn by, who knows, minutes or whatever. But Jacob stole that birthright. You may remember that story. And Jacob worked for 7 years for his uncle to marry the love of his life, Rachel, and he instead was married to Leah by deception and worked another 7 years. So he had two wives, Leah and Rachel. And so this is a story of Jacob at Shechem. At Shechem, Jacob and his family encountered a group of foreign people. And this was in the quest for the promised land. They encountered a group of people who'd been living here that were worshipers of foreign gods. And the son of Hamor, whose name was Shechem, took a liking to one of Jacob's daughters, the daughter of Leah named Dinah. And so Shechem decided when he saw her out in the field one day that he would take her. And so he did. He took her, and the Bible says he defiled her. This is because he was not of the family of Jacob. He was one of these foreigners who worshiped a god or gods that were not the God of Israel, the one true living God. And so Jacob's sons were extremely angry. The brothers of Dinah were extremely angry because this man had taken their sister in this way. And so they arranged a meeting. And there at the meeting, Hamor, who is the father of Shechem, proposes to the sons of Jacob that they form an alliance, that they make peace with each other. And they say, my son Shechem, he's drawn to your sister. So let them marry. In fact, give us your daughters in marriage and let us give you our daughters in marriage, that we might become, I'm kind of ad-libbing, but that we become a people of our own. But Jacob's sons wouldn't hear of it. They were sons of Jacob alone. And so they offered a counteroffer, but it was deceitful. They agreed deceitfully with Hamor to take him up on this offer to exchange daughters in marriage. If in return, or actually before this happened, if the people of Shechem would agree to be circumcised. And so it was that Hamor and the Shechemites decided this was a good proposal. We'll go through this Jewish procedure of circumcision, and then we will become a people with these folks, and we'll exchange daughters in marriage. But Jacob's sons had another agenda. After the Shechemites had submitted themselves to the knife of circumcision, and in the period in which they are healing, Jacob's sons took up swords and they attacked them. It says that Judah and I think Levi, I can't remember the second one, but it names two of them. And it says they took and attacked the people while they were healing. And Jacob was distraught. because I think at this point Jacob feels like now you've started a war. And other people may try to avenge this. So he says we're going to leave this place. We're going back to Bethel. And before we do, he gathers up all of the foreign gods, the little statues, the ideas of God that are not part of Jacob's God. And they gather all of these idols and these foreign gods, and Jacob buries them beneath the oak at Shechem, and then they set out on their journey back to Bethel. In their travels, Jacob encounters the presence of God yet another time in his life, and it is in this story that the voice of God speaks to Jacob and says to him, "You have been known as Jacob until now, but now I'm giving you a new name. Now your name will be Israel. In fact, you will be the father of many nations." Sort of the same promise that they gave his grandfather, Abraham. And in fact, you will inherit the land that God promised your grandfather, Abraham. And so it is that Jacob, who now becomes this person or this nation, the father of 12 tribes of Israel, becomes not only the father of those nations, but the heir to this land, which they have taken rather violently at this point. Where God speaks to Jacob, he stops and he makes a monument. The Bible says that he stacks stones up in a pillar. I once heard a teaching on this that said he made a monument so that every time their people passed that monument, they would remember. They would remember that they are a people of God and that God had delivered them in their day of distress, and that Jacob had built this altar because God had spoken to him and given him the land that had been promised to Abraham and made him the father of nations. They set up a monument to remind them of the goodness of God in their lives, even though at times their behavior did not portray goodness. They set up a monument to remind themselves of their worthiness and of the goodness of God, even though at times their behavior modeled unworthiness. Let's read Psalm 77. I may take pauses along the way. I don't know what Selah means, but I've learned, for me, it means stop, take a breath, think. Psalm 77, I cry aloud to God, that he may hear me. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying, and my soul refuses to be comforted. I think of God and I moan. I meditate and my spirit faints. You keep my eyelids from closing. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old and remember the years of long ago. I commune with my heart in the night. I meditate and search my spirit. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love ceased forever? Are his promises an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? And I say, it is my grief that is the right hand of the Most High has changed. I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and muse on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is so great as our God. You are the God who works wonders. You have displayed your might among the peoples. With your strong arm, you redeemed your people and the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. The very deep troubled. The clouds poured out water. The skies thundered. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightnings lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters, and yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Psalm 77 recalls to mind for the people the deeds of God. Remember, it says, to the people, remember that in the day of your trouble, God has saved you. It says to the people, remember when times are rough that God is on your side. In some ways, it serves as a monument to remind God. When we feel like you are absent, God, don't forget that you are in the business of redeeming us. We are your people. When we know or feel that we have not acted in a way that portrays being a chosen people, us, anyone, when we act in a way that we feel is ungodly, we need to remember and we want to remind God that in spite of our ungodliness, God, you have chosen us and you have blessed us and called us righteous. These psalms, like others, remind people in their day of trouble, like little monuments. They remind them of their history, of the goodness of God to their people, and that they have a future. And they use them over and over. One of the things I know is that hikers like monuments, because I do a lot of hiking. I took a picture of a few of them. If you saw this, you would think Shannon made it, because everywhere we hike and everywhere we go, Shannon builds these little things. But we were hiking in Tennessee when I took this picture, and you can see someone has, and this, I didn't give you the far away shot, but this is in the middle of a raging stream, and someone got out on this rock and built 3 monuments. When we were at the Guadalupe a couple of weeks ago, did anybody here that was at the Guadalupe see any of these up and down the river? Because I did. I saw several of them. I see Steve's hand, Shannon's nodding. I saw several of them up and down the river. They're everywhere. If you haven't noticed them, when you're outside now at the park or at the lake, start watching, because you'll notice that everyday people are simply stacking up stones, and who knows why or what it reminds them of. But I know this, we like monuments. Our nation likes monuments. All nations like monuments. We build things and we construct things and we dedicate days and seasons to bring our minds back to our history, to remind us that we're a good people, to remind us that we have a future, because sometimes the things that are going on around us suggest otherwise. You hear it a lot. The world's going to hell. That the morals in our nation have crumbled, and that is God removing God's favor from us, and people are mean and people are horrible. And you know, there's so much evidence to these things that they literally can't be argued. But we need things to remind us. We build things to remind us. In spite of these things, we're a good people. God has blessed us. We have a future. The national monuments work a lot like that. The Liberty Bell, the Washington Monument, the Vietnam Wall. These things, sure, they talk about the history of our country and the leaders of our country and dedicated people who have given all for this country and for the things that the country has represented for them. But in those monuments, we also hear echoes of other things, that freedom is better than oppression, that democracy is a more honest form of government than monarchy, or that the cost of war is very heavy. Monuments serve to remind us of not only the good things, but the pain and sometimes the cost of those things. You know, you probably have them at your house. You have pictures of places you've been, family gatherings that you like to return to, the family scrapbook that you get out and sit and show people. This is when the kids were small, bless them, and now they're grown. We said this morning, whoever termed the coin terrible twos was someone who had never had a teenager yet. We even save pictures of those years to remind us. And we have other things around the house, mementos of all kinds that sit on shelves or hang on the walls, things that serve to give us hope when we feel sometimes that things are falling apart. And our family here at Wylie Christian Church is no different. We have over many years built monuments here to remind us of our history, of the activities that we've involved ourselves in along the way, and most of all, of the richness and the beauty that comes out of this fellowship and this gathering. And we need those monuments because there are other things that come out of this fellowship too. Sometimes there is contempt for one another. Sometimes there's contempt for progress or the lack of progress. Sometimes you don't like the sermons, for goodness sakes. But we need these reminders against this backdrop to tell us that we are good people and we have a future. We have a future that we can see sometimes in our past. One of the monuments that we first started with here was that Sarah Graham, for many years, from the beginning of this church, decided that it would be a good idea to save bulletins, and not only bulletins, but anything that documented activity in the history of our church. And I don't know how many notebooks are filled with these items now. I know that some others of you have picked up that practice in the last few years, and I see you taking home little mementos, and they show up here later. But I know there were at least 4 notebooks, and I think they're still sitting at the end of the hall. They're in the library, which is an even better place for them now. How about that? Now we have a library. There's another monument right there. And so it is, you can go in the library at your leisure, and you can sit and you can take those books down and you can thumb through the pages of sheet protectors, and you can pull out a worship bulletin and see what people were singing 8 years ago, 9 years ago. You can see pictures. We have other monuments that we try to display for people around the building. You know, we have these little picture frames in the main foyer. And if you sit and watch them, they rotate pictures constantly. You know, that was an idea because when people walk into the building, they think, I'm at the church. But one of the first things that we wanted people to know was that the church is the people. Look at these pictures. Look at people at play, at worship, at work with each other. And it tells a story. It tells it in a better way than we can tell it with one witness at a time sometimes. That people could be drawn to. You know, I really envision, wouldn't it be neat if we had some monitors on the walls? And wouldn't it be neat if we had more than just the 400 or 500 pictures that keep rotating in this? You have pictures. Wouldn't it be neat if you brought them and we put them on monitors in the foyer and in the hallway and the fellowship hall, and there were thousands of those pictures, and that we kept updating them so that the ones that happened in 2015 make it onto the PowerPoint or to the slideshow just in time for people to visit in 2016. Wouldn't that be something? Those pictures tell a story of our life together. Some of them are good memories, and some of them are troubled memories, but we have them, and we have been through these things to remind us that in spite of everything else, we're a good people, and we have a future. There are things that I've kept up here all summer during these sermons. Some of them I've gathered as we've gone along, you know, as I talked about America and Daniel Boone, and as we talked about rhythms of life, and as we talked about pictures and meditating on things. But these were 2 I chose at the beginning. They've been here all summer, and I haven't said a word about them yet, but this cross was constructed by the youth group, and it's not the first thing like this that they constructed for a youth Sunday. But it's one of the first things that they constructed for a youth Sunday, and it made an appearance at other worship services. Do you see how it sort of transformed and took on the life of a monument in this fellowship? Especially for the youth. What made them think to use it again in service after they had already used it? It could have been discarded, but no, it somehow found a place in the building, and not only in the building, but in the lives of the people here. And so it is for at least 2 services. People have come forward and they have written things on here. And now I'm not even sure how to describe them. I don't know if they were prayers or blessings or what they are, but I know that there are things to be read here, and they tell a story. My favorite monument, and this may be the most powerful monument I think that we've had here, is this tree. Matter of fact, when I was introduced to this idea of monuments, this was the first thing I thought about, and I shared it with the group. Shannon made this brown-looking tree one year for Lent, and we put it up here. And every week you were instructed to come forward and to take a pastel piece of paper, pastel colored and shaped like a leaf. And each week you were given some different thing to meditate on or think about, so that you might write something, the name of a person or a situation, or draw a picture or an emblem, something that speaks to others or maybe just to you, and to put that leaf on the tree. And what we did was we watched this ugly brown corrugated cardboard thing that looked like a dead fig tree. I don't know why I said fig tree. I've been studying Mark again. And we put these colorful leaves on it, and over that season it became what you see here. It looks quite alive to me. And I can't tell you what all of these things represent. Especially whoever wrote Doug as always. I don't know what you were praying for there. But I can tell you that just reading these and looking at them, they tell a story. No different than visiting other monuments and walls with names on them. They tell stories. They tell the story of God's activity in the lives of people and in the life of Wylie Christian Church. Like the psalmists, Wylie Christian Church has songs that serve as monuments. We try not to sing them all in one week, except for today, because they're foreign to people who don't go to church here, and we want people to know when they visit or come here that we sing songs you will recognize and we sing songs you won't. But we have songs that are unique to us. Songs that we've written here, or songs that we've arranged or adapted from other places that speak about our faith, that speak about our theology, that speak about our desires and our hope and our vision for the church and for our community and our world. These songs are little monuments. And not just the ones that we've written, but we have other songs. There are songs that I know when I sing, I know that Rick and Ronnie are going to jump up and sing and point at people. There are songs I know when I sing, you're going to grab tissues and walk through the aisles waving. They serve as monuments to remind us, among other things, that we really are a good people and that we have a future. You know, those are important things. When you plant a church, as we did 14 years ago here, there's one thing that you don't know when you plant that church, is that you have a future. Most church plants die in the first year. Most. And we're here 14 years later still singing, I know the plans I have for you. Because we have learned through the years of centering ourselves on our life together, and the blessings and the challenges too, and the pain and the beauty, that we are good people. Now, I know you know better than that at times, but listen to me. We are a good people, and we have a future. And we gather every week. in a gathering that serves in some ways as a reminder that God is here in our lives, working in spite of everything else that tells us no. God is here saying yes, yes. And every week we gather and we celebrate that, and we lift one another up and support one another in our burdens and our challenges. And then as we come to a climax in our time each week, we come to this table, which serves to remind us not only that we have a future with a God who has called us righteous and good, but that we can be certain of the goodness of God, the gifts of God for the people of God. These are our reminders in bread and cup, in pastel and corrugated cardboard. Let us today leave here with a spirit of thanks that just fills our hearts with joy. What a great way to wrap up our summer. Amen? Amen. Will you pray with me?